Not as bad as it could be, but cold. The Ministry has been lying to you and getting away with it. Let's talk about it. Today we're going to be talking about the trace on Underage Wizards and what it has to do with the Calamity. If you are new here and haven't immediately abandoned ship because you're like, I don't know who this chick is. Hi, my name is Zoe and this is Snitches and Witches. I'm going to be covering Wizards Unite tips and news and conspiracies and oh god, why do I live here? I live in Alaska. Anyway, you should subscribe because, you know, I'm halfway cute and I'm freezing my butt off. We don't have a game yet, but, you know, yeah, I'm not salty about that. I really want this game. Hang on, I have to warm up my hand. First, let's talk about the trace, because what is the trace? So the trace is a spell placed on underage wizards by the Ministry of Magic to make sure that they're not practicing magic outside of Hogwarts and in front of muggles and disobeying the International Statute of Secrecy, which keeps all of wizard kind safe from muggles who in the past have not been overly kind to magical folk. How does the trace work? Well, we kind of don't know. There's not a lot of information and most of it is just conjecture. The first time we see the trace implemented is actually in Chamber of Secrets when Harry gets a letter from Hogwarts after Dobby makes a mess in the kitchen. Dobby uses magic in his general vicinity, and then because he's the only known wizard at number 4 Privet Drive, the Ministry thinks that he has performed magic in front of muggles, which as we know is a big no-no. I have to turn up the fans. I'm sorry if the sound quality is crap. Warm up faster! There we find out that the restriction of underage magic is so important to upholding the International Statute of Secrecy that the Ministry has an entire office dedicated to the misuse of magic, with people sending out memos as soon as they get an alert. And Harry gets an alert relatively quickly, so we know that the system is pretty much instantaneous. And so is their system for sending out letters. How fast do those owls fly? When an underage wizard performs magic, the Ministry is informed of this relatively quickly. They're notified of who cast the spell, where they cast the spell, and what spell they cast. Now, there's a lot of problems that happen here. They don't actually know who precisely cast the spell, they just know that someone performed magic in their general vicinity. Mostly that just seems like a plot loophole to me and not actually a convenience loophole. Because we also know that kids in pureblood families who live in mostly wizarding communities or entirely wizarding communities, their parents are the ones who are responsible for upholding the Statute of Secrecy. So it seems that the Ministry of Magic isn't overly concerned with them. However, half-blood and muggle-born children are under much heavier scrutiny because their parents don't know all of the wizarding laws. I kind of just thought of this. Essentially, muggle-born witches and wizards are pretty much wards of the state underneath the Ministry. Crazy. There are lots of inconsistencies with how all of this shenanigans works, and it's very annoying. Inconsistencies include when Lord Voldemort manages to kill his father and his grandparents when he's 16, when the Weasleys perform multiple spells and use flu powder with Harry there, and when the Order takes Harry away from Privet Drive in the Order of the Phoenix, and then when they do it again in Deathly Hallows with the Battle of the Seven Harrys. So, just like we choose to ignore that the Cursed Child is canon, we kind of have to ignore those inconsistencies. Or maybe they work to our advantage. So, what does this all have to do with the Calamity? Well, in the second Wizards Unite trailer, we see a notification that says incoming trace just before we see the footage of the traffic cam and Nimbus 2000s and all of that fun stuff happening. Because they say use the specific term incoming trace. So what else are they tracing other than underage wizards? If not all of wizard kind. Am I good to drive yet? I can't see it on I cannot see out of my back window. I'm gonna go scrape my back window while I wait for the last of this to defrost. Okay, I can finally see through my back window. So, I'm gonna skedaddle. I've gotta go. I've gotta go to the store. I've gotta get gas and, well, diesel. Don't put gas in a diesel truck. Don't do that. That's bad. And then I have to take some stuff to my mommy. My hands are really cold, okay? It's really cold. I thought I was gonna film this next chunk while I was out there. And then I decided against it because it's too freaking cold. So we already know that the Ministry of Magic can put the trace on you, but they can also turn it off by the mere fact that we know that the alarm does not go off every single time a student performs magic at Hogwarts, because that would be terrible. That would be literally the worst job in the world. So obviously it can either be turned off by location, or it can be turned off using just like, they know all of these kids from this age to this age are going to be in Hogwarts. We also know that because parents are charged with the discipline of their children who don't follow the rules underneath the Statute of Secrecy, that it's entirely possible that there are certain areas of the wizarding community where the trace doesn't go off at all. So this means that even though the trace can be activated and deactivated manually, that also means that the records are still kept somewhere. Because, you know, bureaucracy. Time to go and get supplies for my sick family. So with all of this being said, I think that it is entirely possible that the ministry says that they remove the trace on all witches and wizards who come of age. But in fact, all that happens is that they turn off the alarm for that particular person. But they keep all of the records still of everything that they're doing, simply so that they have the records so they can trace back the Calamity. This way they can keep track of all of the spells cast by everyone and all of the magical disturbances ever caused by anyone. And in cases of the Calamity, trace it back and figure out what kind of counterspell they need to implement. If the ministry never removes the trace on witches and wizards who come of age, this makes a lot of situations within the wizarding world even more terrible. Things like Voldemort being able to get away with all of the crap he was getting away with for so long. Bellatrix Lestrange torturing the freaking Longbottoms for so long. And Sirius Black being accused of murder. Because there's a couple of things that have always bugged me about Sirius. They could have run a trace on his wand. That is a spell, there is a charm that you can cast that will tell you exactly which spell has last been cast by the wand. That's how they absolved Harry during the Quidditch World Final. If the ministry could run all of those tests and look back through their records, on top of all of that, they would have irrefutable proof that Sirius Black was innocent and he didn't have to go to Azkaban. And the story of Harry Potter could have been very different. Why does the ministry keep all of those records? There's a lot of possibilities there. But I gotta go inside and get my groceries because people are looking at me funny. And this is just gonna be my life now. I have to get over that. So, why would the ministry keep all of these people on the trace? It's entirely possible that it's just a classic case of it's too freaking hard to take the trace off of somebody once it's been put on, much like many bewitchments, like the permanent sticking charm are kind of like that. So it could just be a case of laziness. Nobody knows how to do it, so they don't. It's also possible that the convenience is just too tempting, while paperwork, more often than not, is a burden. Data is not a burden. It could entirely be that having all of that information and collecting all of that information is too big of a temptation for the ministry to handle. And it's entirely possible that this is just the Wizarding World's version of the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was enacted during a time when we were really, really scared here in the Muggle world, and you could say that about many different points during the Wizarding World's history. If the Ministry had a chance to keep tabs on many different people within the Wizarding World, who's to say that they would not, that they would relinquish that idea? That's not to say that it's right. It's not to say that even the Patriot Act was right or anything like that. I don't think that the US should have to spy on their citizens and breach privacy. Nor do I think that the ministry should have to do that, all for the sake of the greater good. Where have we heard that term before? So it's possible that they turn things off in certain areas, Diagon Alley, Hogsmeade, possibly where the Burrow is, and Hogwarts, just out of the interest of they don't need those klaxons going off every 5 minutes. But they keep tabs on everyone else, including underage magic users and possibly known dark wizards at large. That makes sense. So how would this system work? Now, we already know that something like the Marauders map exists, which basically allows you to keep tabs on everybody who's breathing, even the ghosts within Hogwarts. So, if we know that something like that exists just for Hogwarts, and it was built by a bunch of teenagers really interested in partying in the woods like they're animagi, then there has to be somebody good enough at the ministry to build a similar system for the ministry to keep tabs on everybody. Now, that doesn't entirely explain away the laziness portion, where they possibly just would be too lazy to take it off, but wouldn't it be more fun? That's always what scientists think, right? You could also see what spell precisely has been cast, just like the ministry told Harry that they knew exactly what spell he had cast. So, that's why I think it's not out of the reach. That's why I think it's not a stretch. I think that the ministry just never lifted the trace off of everybody who was underage, especially not after the Second Wizarding War. Maybe they did do it during the Second Wizarding War, and then afterwards they were like, nope, too risky. Let's just keep it on. Let's just keep it on, just because people do weird things when they're scared, man. People do weird things. So, what do you think? Is this possible? Is it a reach? Is the Ministry of Magic lying to us? Is this just another form of political commentary with the NSA? Or is this just Niantic exploring a new aspect of J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World? I don't know. I think it's possible. I think it's interesting to explore. I think it's entirely possible. I've got my tinfoil hat on. I'm freaking out. But now I'm gonna stop talking because my throat hurts and I have another video to do today. This isn't looking good, y'all, but I gotta do it now because if I'm sick for the next 2 weeks, bro, it's gonna be bad. Oh, and Shane's thing is coming out in 3 hours. I gotta get home, y'all.